half of the month, I don't know, 76%, about three-quarters, disappeared when there's less than a half moon. One might say, well, it's darker then, harder to see your footing if you're wandering around intoxicated. Victims attended college within 50 miles of I-94. I assume that's where the big universities are, but if they aren't, please correct me, where you might see more young men drinking, and then the timelines of the drowning move in a consistent pattern, so you'll have to explain that for me.
Well, the initial analysis that we did back last spring and finally pulled together in May of 2006 was based on information from the internet. We put dots on the map, we recorded the times, we did maps relative to time, and then we analyzed time as a factor itself. And we didn't set out to prove that there's a serial killer. We did not set out to disprove anything. What we were looking at was testing two separate hypotheses, one that it was accidental and the other that there's a serial killer, the urban legend. So as we looked at this information available to us relative to rates of drowning per white males for that age group, I looked at survey data from the Centers for Disease Control regarding the drinking behaviors of Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Indiana, and naturally Wisconsin and Minnesota had the higher rates of adult binge drinking and chronic drinking, and those are also the states with the largest number of victims. So there was a correlation there. The darkness one, that can go either way. Predators hunt when it's dark, and darkness contributes to accidents.
And there is some physical similarity. Now, you do have both white and Asian, but we've got this across the bottom of the screen. But early 20s, about 5'8", 165 pounds, good grades. In other words, there is some similarity in all of these particular victims, and you would expect, if there is more of a random drowning circumstance here, that you would see more racial diversity, more educational diversity, and certainly things as simple as height and weight.
Well, we know the folks who write the books and work in this area that I'm teaching to my students, we know that crime naturally tends to cluster around people, around places, and around certain times. But we have to keep that in mind. But when you start looking at, a very small demographic profile of individuals who are dying and falling into rivers, and the presumption is that that behavior is associated with those individuals, then you really can't say that it's those kids, but only at the big schools, who are doing it. We should see victims elsewhere that fit that profile. And that's part of my plea to the American people. We look on the internet for information for this, and we can only find victims along I-94 and Interstate 90. If there's, folks out there in Arizona and there's a similar case like this, they should contact me with that information so we can include it, because it's that external information outside this local problem
that can change the parameters.
That helps us sort out the difference between accident and killer.
Okay, I want to put up a possible profile. I don't know where this comes from, so you'll explain it for me. A possible profile of a killer. Male, white, 37 to 42, 5'8 to 5'10". You've got a weight, wears glasses, but only to read. Light metallic blue or silver mid-sized four-door vehicle. Extremely religious mother. B student in high school. Participated in athletics. Attended college in the late 80s in Wisconsin. Occupation requires, as you just described, to travel the I-94 corridor. That's very specific. A lot of detail. Where in the world do you get all of that?
Well, that profile, I had two graduate students working with me last May on this. I provided them with the data set and some ideas for modeling, and then they worked on it. And the profile was generally developed. I mean, there's a standard profile for serial killers in the United States. Occasionally we get a woman or we get a black male as a serial killer, but generally it's a white male. It pretty much came out of that. The wearing glasses, that has more to do with the likely age of the killer. Like I wear glasses to read. And the color of the vehicle. It's very broad generalizations.
But you've got people debating, you've got people thinking. At this point in time, Doctor, how have authorities responded to your findings? Are they just basically poo-pooing all of this, or have you intrigued some of them enough to take a harder look?
Actually, you know, when you look at the press, the printed press, not television media, most law enforcement is sticking with the accident hypothesis. I am getting a lot of emails from former and current law enforcement who are congratulating us on getting people talking about it. And that's just it. The patterns that the grad students came up with, particularly with the information that we had, which clearly biases us towards this finding, because when we do searches on the internet, we can't find anything in Colorado like this. We can't find anything in Oklahoma or northern Minnesota, and there's lots of lakes up there. So I'm getting a good balance as far as feedback, and that's the whole part of it. My job as a professor is to get my students to think about something, and you know, if I can get the public to start to debate this, the data did suggest...
I'll tell you what, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we're running out of time, but the most important thing is getting law enforcement to debate this, because if it is worth another look, they need to do exactly that. We will stay on this, and your findings are very intriguing. Dr. Lee Gilbertson, Todd Richmond, much appreciated.
Thank you.